some have written and talked about the surprising phenomenon of LLMs sounding more human. But I think the deeper concern is actually that we start to sound more like them, and that we start to mirror the outputs of LLMs. And there's a lot of research suggesting that's already happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's like where we start. And again, we've got the anthropology, we've got the experience, the 2,000 years of wisdom of the church. We have to start by identifying what are the problems and opportunities, and how do we apply specifically to those problems.
Well, Dr. Aaron Dominguez, John Brahier, it's fantastic to be with you guys today as the Builders AI conference is going on. So thank you for joining me in the Gregorian studio here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm really excited to talk to you today and really excited to be here participating in this conference.
How is AI already transforming classrooms, research, and administration?
I'm kind of an early adopter kind of guy with my tech background. So I've been using all these tools for quite some time now, and it's made me way more efficient, which is, I think, the good aspects of these set of tools. But no, it's here. It's here to stay. And we've at the conference last year, I was getting ready to launch a new bachelor's degree and master's degree in AI for our students from a Catholic perspective, incorporating our ethics and the magisterium of the church. And these students, they learn how to code, and they learn what the tools are in the theory, but they also take philosophy classes and theology classes and integrate our faith into, the design and use of these tools, which I was, working through those problems of what does that look like at the conference last year. So for me personally, to see that launched for this fall semester is great.
And John, and how do you see AI transforming classrooms when you talk to teachers or parents or administrators?
Well, I'll pick up on 2 points that Dr. Dominguez made. The first is that organically AI has been in our classrooms for many years now, even pre-2022. I mean, AI was being very subtly used, if not perceptibly by students or teachers. So organic use has been around, and certainly since 2022 with ChatGPT, that has very much been a reality that we've had to contend with. The second point that I want to spend a little bit of time on is the pedagogy question, because I think that's been the great opportunity that has come up in conversation, especially with K-12 teachers. For many of them, the first gut instinct is, oh, this is another cheating tool, which of course, if used improperly, a tool like ChatGPT can be a cheating tool. But it's also a great opportunity to step back and think about, what is our philosophy of education? Why do we teach? Some of the bigger questions that often we don't get to wrestle with because as teachers, we're so consumed by the task in front of us. But the artificial intelligence era has almost forced those conversations to come to the fore, because as soon as you get into policy writing or adjusting your syllabi, you inherently have to ask those questions about, what will we allow students to use AI for? What will I allow myself to use AI for? And then you're actually having a philosophy conversation, a pedagogical conversation yourself, which to me has been one of the more exciting opportunities that has come up.
Yeah, I would agree.
And John, where do you see those questions or philosophical moments occurring?
I think in at least to some degree, it depends on the type of school. And this is where it's been very interesting working, my particular focus and our focus here is in Catholic education, but it's been really interesting seeing how in different educational settings, the priority sets are a little bit different. There's one very common or well-known AI school that exists that has really leaned into the utilitarian form of education, which is basically a commodification of skills and knowledge and basic facts, which from our Catholic worldview is completely misaligned. The point of education is a formative experience that prepares a student for discipleship in their lives and apostleship, and then ultimately sainthood. That's a very different version of education, which asks a different set of questions. And again, those are the questions that I think we are able to ask and are forced to ask now with this set of tools that can just do things, automate things for us.
Yeah, I think that's well said, John. Yeah,
I love that. And Dr. Dominguez, it feels like AI is transforming every sector that it touches. What in your perspective makes Catholic education uniquely equipped to lead in the age of AI?
Yeah. I think it goes, and this is how we actually started our morning session at the workshop. It goes back to the question of what is Catholic education for? What's the difference between Catholic education and a secular education? Is it just that they're learning the same subjects and then the students say prayers or go to mass, or what is the purpose of Catholic education? And it's what John said, and in our case, for the Catholic University of America, we have a specific mission written on paper by Pope Leo XIII, telling us what we're supposed to do and ordering the bishops to go make it happen. And that's to produce worthy ministers and, the best, well-formed citizens for our country and the world. That's our job as a university. And now AI is this new reality. It's a set of tools, but it's also a change of an era in the same way that the printing press or the Industrial Revolution was. Things are going to be different on the other side. As you said, it's integrating into everything quickly. So we have from our faith, we have 2,000 years of thought, scholarship, and Christ, encounter with Christ on our side to help us think through these things. And it's important to, and what we can truly do and make a truth claim about is that we know what a human being is, and we know what we're for. We know the purpose of our existence. We know that God has a plan for us, a unique plan, and we can craft an education around that. We have, and now we've got these set of powerful and potentially dangerous tools that, if you don't have that perspective of what a human being is, can lead to terrible things. And my friends who are outside of the church or who are, secular humanists and otherwise just very good people and don't want to do bad things, like Google's don't do evil. Like, that's an incomplete answer to what you should do, but it's not bad to try to not do evil. The problem, the things they struggle with is telling the difference between the simulation of a particular trait of a human being and a real person. Like, how do you tell the difference between these chat GPT outputs and me and you talking? And we know the answer the difference between these things, because God made us, imago Dei, in this image and likeness, in order to know and love him and to be with him. And this is a tool that we're using. Now, it's a very dangerous tool, just like a knife can be a very dangerous tool, or you can use it. I could use a knife to hurt somebody, or I could use it to cut my steak. So it's the intentionality of the persons. You have to understand that who we are, what are we for, and who are my fellow travelers on the earth at this time. Catholic education gives us the framework and answers for that there's just a limit that you can't get with secular education. That's, I think, the answer.
What do you see going on in higher education as AI continues to transform, as these technologies continue to transform the landscape?
Yeah, I mean, it's higher education is in a moment of crisis itself, and I think this is contributing to it. It's not the origin of it, but there's a lot of negative factors right now at play in higher ed. There's some justly and unjustly, negative views of higher ed. And I think that it does, as a sector, I think does deserve some correction, but it's certainly under attack. And pure utilitarianism leads to things like the Holocaust, right? That's the ultimate result of that type of thinking is horrific, right? So we certainly must avoid that direction at all costs. And I think people of goodwill who are in these secular universities, many of whom are Catholics themselves, but maybe not in position to change the mission of the university, are looking for people like us to work with. And I think we see them there in the room, so they can bring that back. So that's, I think, one of our goals here is to be missionaries, send out missionaries into the world.
It strikes me as providential when I look back at the last roughly 150 years or so, how God has prepared us for this moment. We had the Industrial Revolution and the blossoming of Catholic social teaching. We had the theology of the body unpacked by John Paul II. And strangely, we have, at least in the United States, an increasingly secular world that's actually becoming more interested, I think, in some of these deeper existential questions, more open to the teachings of the church in some ways. And so in a kind of a strange way, I think when you put those factors together, the church is again providentially able to speak directly to the heart of the matter. And then you ask the question, like, how can Catholic schools and Catholic education broadly lead? I think it starts by identifying the problem areas and how do we address the problems. And for me, when I've worked with teachers, we talk about academic integrity, right? That's where most conversations start.
That's true.
And it starts there, and for some folks ends there. But I think more deeply, my concerns lie in the disruption that can take place, especially in the writing process. Writing is iterative, right? It takes successive attempts. Drafting improperly used AI can reduce the number of iterations and then severely limit what you produce. But I think actually that idea of production is also something that's under attack, and that we need to think about, that there's a distortion taking place. And that's the third that I end up discussing with teachers is, what is the actual ends of an education? Again, that's where the Catholic Church and our schools and educational institutions have a particular answer. But most deeply is this mirroring idea that some have written and talked about the surprising phenomenon of LLMs sounding more human. But I think the deeper concern is actually that we start to sound more like them, and that we start to mirror the outputs of LLMs. And there's a lot of research suggesting that's already happening. Yeah. And I think that's like where we start. And again, we've got the anthropology, we've got the experience, the 2,000 years of wisdom of the church. We have to start by identifying what are the problems and opportunities, and how do we apply specifically to those problems.
Yeah. Well, I have a question on kind of the LLMs and the algorithms and the automation. So I was talking to Father Philip Leray from Boston College, who I adore, and we were having a conversation about the kind of the opening days of his class. And in Boston at that time, there was an advertisement that, I don't know, John, I might have told you this, but it really shocked me. It was essentially an advertisement, on a bus stop, and there was a number of these throughout, and it was a digitalized AI. So it was a kind of, it was like almost like an animation. So you could tell it was not a real person, but it was of course in human form and all that. And it said, don't hire humans. You shouldn't hire humans. Hire us robots. And one of the kids in the classroom came up to Father Philip, and I was like, Father, what's the point?
Yeah. I think the answer to that is that there's going to be a set of jobs that that a machine can do better and is more efficient. And I think that's why you're seeing some of these mass layoffs. But the reason is because these are very powerful tools that people can use. So that's part of what our program at Catholic University is meant to do, is to prepare the students, even if you're an English major, how do you use these tools? But especially the tech people, who seems to be more at risk. How do you use these set of tools to work in the tech industry? And that we can do. Like, that's our job as a university. So I think the answer is teach your students workforce development. We've been talking to industries there in the DC area who have a great workforce that needs to be re-educated. Like, that's what we do. We can do that too. So that's the moment. If you don't learn these new tools, or if you come out of college unprepared, then you, I think, are going to be at a disadvantage.
And John, when you look at AI adoption for classrooms and teaching settings, whether it's in high school or university, where do you draw the line on where AI should not be used for Catholic education? Where is too much AI?
There's in Pope Leo's most recent letter that he released about a week ago at this point, he warns of different extremes. One of them is the technophobia, which is the let's run back to the caves mentality. Which sometimes sounds attractive, but then when you fully think about what that life looks like, probably not as attractive as maybe at an initial glance it might sound. And the other is a digital reductionism, right? That at an extreme, again, commodifies learning, eliminates humans from that process. And I think as a starting point, I look at Antiqua et Nova, which directly says that the use of artificial intelligence and when I say directly, I don't mean this is a quote, but this is a paraphrasing from Antiqua et Nova, that the use of artificial intelligence in educational settings needs to accompany a human relationship between student and teacher. And I think that's the right way to frame it. Absent that, I think we start to potentially open ourselves up to some real problems. I think our classrooms need to be places of physical encounter as much as that can be possible. when we need external technologies, whether that's AI, whether that's a textbook, whatever that is, great. But as long as that is oriented towards human flourishing, again, in the physical context of the classroom, facilitating those relationships. Now, that's like a high level place to start. But I think that the prudence that's required to actually unpack where do we draw those lines requires a number of different factors. How old are your students developmentally? Where are they? Again, college setting is very different than the elementary school setting.
Right.
And so I think there's a number of factors that we need to start weighing up. But it's those high level things about the relationship between teacher and student, the incarnational nature of our classrooms that I think really should be the starting points.
Yeah, I think rather than a line, you asked, where's the line that you don't cross? I think it's a bigger question of what's the purpose of this interaction between the person and the machine. What's the desired outcome? And so we've been thinking about this for the past year as we designed this new use of AI and this new curriculum, and kind of settled on 3 pillars that help guide us to answer the set of questions that are related to what you're saying. And the first is that we should conceive of these interactions with a human and an AI or some emergent technology as a human machine team, with the human being as the principal protagonist in this interaction at the center, the human person, since we know, as we talked about earlier, we know what a human being is, made in the image and likeness of God. He should be at the center of this interaction with the machine. And so there's a proper ordering to this interaction and an improper ordering. And the improper ordering leads to bad stuff, or can lead to bad stuff. So yeah, it should be thought of as using this tool for a person. And then the second pillar is this flourishing. This interaction should open up a window for the human being to flourish. There should be a new opportunity for the human to grow in virtue. And that's, if you design it on purpose that way, you can up your chances that that's likely to happen. And you should avoid strictly the opposite. You should never design this type of interaction to encourage vice, right? Which is going to be hurting somebody. Like if you designed an artificial girlfriend, like that young man is not going to flourish. He's not going to grow in virtue. He's not going to love. So that's number 2. And then the third is that like we mentioned it, I think earlier this morning, it should lead to an authentic human interaction. The example you gave is it should lead to, we're all in class together for 90 minutes discussing face to face, what we think and asking questions. That's an authentic human interaction, right? Mm-hmm. So if it leads to that type of interaction, like maybe you used AI to do some research on John to prepare for this podcast.
I absolutely did.
Yes. But here we are, sharing some jokes and growing in friendship. And that's a good human interaction.
I think to follow up on 2 of the things you said, one of my favorite use cases that I've experienced from, or at least heard from teachers, is the idea that they will encourage their students to use whatever the approved version of Gemini or whatever the tool is at their school to prepare for in-class debates. Yeah. Whether it's from research or even just practicing delivering a portion of the debate, having it critiqued by, again, whatever the tool is, to better facilitate an in-person encounter, because I think that's the right orientation, exactly right? Yeah. And I think that the second pillar that you outlined, that idea of human flourishing, gets right back to the job question. Yeah. Because I think, I can speak personally about this, that it's really hard for me at times to separate my own personal identity from my work, because it's so intrinsically just part of who I am, right? And that's been my own, journey, but I don't think I'm alone in that. And I think especially as we race towards some form of job loss, no matter how big or small that is, there's a potential existential cliff that people are going to face when they realize, like, oh, this thing that I did that defined me in a sense is gone. What is the purpose of my life? And that's where the question about how do we define and explain human flourishing. This is not a Catholic education issue. This is a Catholic Church pastoral issue.
Right? Well, I mean, that's partially what Rerum Novarum was about. And so I think Rerum Novarum 2.0 that Pope Leo is probably going to write. Work is human dignity. Like work leads to human dignity, especially for men, just because of the differences in families. giving a man a just wage to do honorable work gives him dignity. And if you take that away for some reason, it hurts. Like it really hurts. So if now your entire profession has been erased, that's like scary.
And I think it's even more acute right now because most of the research that I've read is that the job loss currently is impacting junior level employees, which is basically folks coming out of college, because those are the types of tasks that can be automated right now. So as we think again in parishes and other ministries about how do we, what are the pastoral issues, especially for that demographic of 20 to 25, that's going to be a real need. But then certainly that's going to scale over time as AI improves.
And also in the optimistic settings where they're like, oh yeah, don't worry, your material needs, your material goods will be provided at a fraction of the cost, and you'll have more time to do the things that we do want to do, the things of leisure, contemplation, all that stuff, which sounds great. But I am very wary of unearned pleasure, unearned comfort. Like as a man, but also as someone who's industrious and wants to work, I grow so much when I'm learning, when I'm being stretched, when I'm being challenged. And I think that I think like something that I don't know if this is directly something in education, but that ability in education for people to find their vocations, then to have a vision of how to get there.
Yeah.
Well, I think not even defining, but exploring what true leisure looks like is a great need in like our families and our schools, other institutions, because this is something that people wrote about like 75 years ago, right? Or maybe not quite that long ago, but that we yearn for this freedom. But when we achieve freedom, what are we going to spend it on? And I think, again, there's a great need in our educational institutions to, again, orient us in the right direction to be able to experience leisure if and when that becomes more readily available.
Yeah, I certainly need more of that. I think what is it called? Eutropelia, when you don't know how to relax.
Oh.
Like I don't know how to like go on vacation.
My wife's grandmother often speaks about how different vacations were for their family after the invention of the car phone, because prior to the car phone, a vacation was true separation. But after the car phone, you were always at least sort of accessible.
Yeah.
And I think with every digital technology since then, that's just been ramped up, right?
Yeah. Now there is no off switch in a weird way.
Yeah, until you go camping in the mountains, which is what we love to do too.
Yeah, yes, me too.
And so just to kind of wind down here, as AI accelerates, Dr. Dominguez and John, what practical steps in training, in partnerships, in strategic investments can Catholic institutions integrate AI effectively to lead in this transformation?
Well, I'll give you just some concrete examples, and we can pull back from there. But so we're a unique university in the United States in that we're the National Pontifical University, the only one, and founded by all the U.S. bishops. So in a sense, like we serve the Church of the United States and the bishops, and that's one of the main purposes of our university. And this is a leadership class that's extremely important in the church, and probably very few of them are current in AI. Maybe one or two, like the guys who have their podcasts are probably up to speed on a lot of stuff, but many of them aren't. So this is the code I use for it. It has a more polite term, but we've created a AI boot camp for bishops. Yeah, which is going to go live here, hopefully pretty soon before their November meeting. But it's just kind of basic stuff. It's a set of 15-minute modules that Taylor Black has helped us put together, and it's asynchronous and delivered online, and it's firewalled off, so it's currently not publicly accessible. It's just for those men right now. But that's because they need to understand like the language, like the words. That's where we begin, and then what are the set of tools? What are the kind of good things that you can do with this? How can you use this for your diocese, for your business? How can you help your priests? So a series of modules like that. So that's something that we're well suited to do, given our our existence as the Catholic University of America. So there's that, and then there's just the education of our students that I mentioned before. And then producing shows like this, right? We have to think through this stuff.
It's been really heartening to see different individuals and institutions jumping into the fray. there have been frameworks released. I mean, even this morning in our education breakout, we had a gentleman talking about a set of resources that he's putting online and making available for parishes to think through, again, these core questions of what are the terms, what is AI, how do we approach it? So the growing bank of resources it has been good. I think the only challenge we might run into there is that we might overwhelm the faithful who are looking for, okay, where do I go to get good information? There's 300 frameworks, there's 300 sets of video modules. So I think that the more that we can be precise about, okay, this is a particular need that my institution or me individually that I can fill, the better. But I think that I love the idea of addressing the language that we use, because there's so many interesting semantic questions around artificial intelligence. Even just that term itself is fascinating. So to start by unpacking what is that term, and then some of the related definitions and ideas. And then I think the fundamental orientations about, instead of just saying, let's use AI, it's what are the problems you're trying to solve? Okay, great. Let's start with those and then start attacking them by plugging in solutions. So those are the kinds of resources that I think are most helpful for folks.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Aaron Dominguez and John Brahier, for joining me today on this podcast. I want to let you go back to the Builders AI Forum to continue to work on these important problems. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Ben.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Dominguez.
Yeah, thank you.